Will the banner come up, Charlotte? Yeah.
We're recording, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the digital meeting of the Cabinet, Wednesday, the 13th of January. Okay, agenda as of today is going to be altered slightly, so I'll just go through the normal items and then I'll readjust the agenda. To receive apologies for absence, do we have any apologies?
Yeah, yes, Leader. Dave Street, Corporate Director for Social Care and Housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so on to declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and/or prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on the agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Is there anything to declare? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, so back on to the to approve and sign the minutes then on the 9th of December, and I will go through those page by page. Okay, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, 5, 6, page 7. Is everyone content with those? If I can have a show of hands.
Move.
Thank you. Would someone like to second those?
I'll second them.
Thank you. Okay, we'll accept those. Thank you. Unanimous. Okay. And then the next set of minutes, which was held on Wednesday, the 16th of December, I'll go through page by page, which is page 9 for the record. Page 10. Page 11. Is everyone content with those?
Move.
That's a true record. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Thank you, Councillor George, seconding those. Okay, that's unanimous, approved. Okay, and obviously our usual item to note the forward work programme. Everyone content with the contents of the forward work programme to date? If I can have a show of hands on those. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, they're noted.
Leader, can I just interrupt? I apologise. I have such a poor signal. I'm going to have to go without camera, I think, today. So if I can get in, I will do. But I'll have to contribute just by audio.
That's fine. Okay, then, and in that case, then sure. Then on any of those where I've just asked for a show of hands, then you come in and make that comment. Verbally,
indeed, Leader.
Please,
clearly, indeed, Leader, and clearly I supported that previous recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Councillor Ridgewell. Okay, so what I have asked here is that we're going to actually change the order of some of the agenda items, simply because some members of the Cabinet have to attend a ministerial meeting later in it overlaps with this meeting effectively. So what we're going to do, we're going to move the budget proposals, the draft budget proposals and the Teachers' Board to be items 1 and 2 on the agenda. Okay, and I've agreed that with Cabinet and officers. Okay, so I'll hand over to Elena then to introduce the draft budget proposals.
Thank you, Leader. Before I introduce this report, I would like to place on record my thanks to officers who have worked tirelessly in the budget setting process in a very tight timeline. The purpose of the report is to present Cabinet with details of the draft budget proposals for the 2021-22 financial year to allow for a period of consultation prior to a final decision by Council on the 24th of February 2021. I am pleased to report that the 3.1% uplift in the provisional financial settlement along with the proposed increase in council tax of 3.9%, will mean that there will be no requirement for any new savings to be identified to balance the budget for the 2021-22 financial year. Furthermore, the proposals in this report will also maintain service provision across the council, fund increasing demand and service pressures in key areas such as social services and education, enable new community-focused investments in areas such as Caerphilly Cares and the proposed Community Empowerment Fund, provide the capacity and resilience required to drive forward the Team Caerphilly transformation programme and place-shaping investments, address legacy issues in respect of income shortfalls in a number of service areas. The Council is on a journey of recovery, improvement and transformation, and the proposals set out in the report will provide a sound platform for us to move forward with our ambitious plans. It is important that I emphasise that the financial settlement does not cover the financial implications of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, both in terms of the additional costs that continue to be incurred and income losses. These will continue to be funded through grants, and the position will be kept under close review as we move into the new financial year. Whilst the 3.1% uplift in the financial settlement is welcomed, the future funding situation for local government is likely to be challenging due to the unprecedented physical impact of COVID-19 and the strain that it will put on public finances for years to come. Section 5.4 of the report provides details of the financial outlook for the 4-year period 2022-23 year to 2025-26, and it is clear that significant savings will be required moving forward. The Council is well placed to deal with this challenge, and our transformation programme will be the key driver in ensuring that financial resilience is maintained in future years. In terms of recommendations, Cabinet is asked to endorse the draft proposals for 2021-22 budget proposals, support the proposal to increase a council tax by 3.9% for the 2021-22 financial year to ensure that a balanced budget is achieved. Endorse the proposal to appoint 4 fixed-term project managers for an initial period of 2 years to support the delivery of the Council's transformation programme and place-shaping agenda, with the total cost of £368,000 being funded from a £1.8 million reserve previously approved by Council to support the delivery of the mid-term financial plan. Agreed that the draft budget proposal should now be subject to consultation prior to final 2021-22 budget proposals being presented to Cabinet Council in February 2021. Note the indicative potential savings requirement of £20.7 million for the 4-year period from 2022-23 year to 2025-26. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Councillor Cook.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I remember the connection problems, yeah. Thanks, Lee. I'm more than happy to second this budget, as it will help with the current day-to-day financial pressures. There will be no cuts made to council services, and the budget will enable the council to invest in Caerphilly Cares, which helps residents with this ongoing pandemic.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor Cook. I think we're all having a few network problems here at the moment. Councillor Phipps?
Yeah, I've got a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's on the council tax reduction scheme that the authority is required to fund, and I'd like to ask officers how many residents this scheme will benefit, please?
I can come in there, Philippa, and answer
Yeah, that's fine.
Lisa's question. There's currently 16,800 households receiving financial support through the council tax reduction scheme, and many are benefited from 100% reduction in their payments. I don't know whether Steve Harris want to come in to add anything further.
Steve, would like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, just to emphasise that 63% of the households who are receiving support through the council tax reduction scheme do actually get 100% reduction in their council tax.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Councillor Cook?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I also have a question as well regarding households in Caerphilly. How many are there between band A and C?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cock. There are 79,754 households registered for council tax purposes. Bands A to C, that is about 76.02%.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor George?
Thank you, Leader. It's a quick question. Where does our Band D property sit in comparison with the other authorities?
Are you going to answer that, Councillor Stenner, or is that for Steve Harris?
Yeah. Our Band D council tax in Caerphilly, if we compare that to, say, our neighbouring authority of Blaen y Gwent, it's £527 per year lower than Blaen y Gwent.
Thank you. That's interesting. Thank you.
Okay, it's that, Councillor Stenner. So in terms of Gwent authorities then, does that make us one of the lowest then?
It certainly does, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just to say that, you know, after so many years of austerity, this is a very welcome budget, and it's a very forward-looking budget. Within the report there at 5.2.41, it talks about the Community Empowerment Fund. And we've had many discussions around this, and I know that the Cabinet's vision for this fund, it's not simply about giving money out in different areas, it's about having community buy-in. So what we really want is a grant application criteria that meets the objectives and vision for the fund. And I'm just wondering if we could have sight of that application criteria before it's run out, if it could be signed off by the relevant cabinet member.
Okay. Ed, did you want to come in on that in response to Councillor Morgan?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's a reference in the report to us coming back to Cabinet with an additional report that sets out how this is going to work. I think you're absolutely right. What we do with that cash, or what members do with that cash, has to have the maximum benefit for the community. So we'll pull together some criteria and a process attached to that and get it back in front of members before it is brought into being. Thanks, Leader.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. If I could just come back and just to say that obviously, you know, the criteria is to be looking that communities either match fund that with their own cash, whether it's sports clubs or community councils, or also within there that it could be matched funded with volunteer time. So that kind of criteria we're looking for.
Yeah, sure. We'll pull something together for members, and then we'll be guided by you. Thanks, Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's about that vision, isn't it? About that community, and that community empowerment is strong. We've talked about this for quite some time now, and it's to give back. It's to make sure that our communities are involved in those things that can alter their place. Okay, thank you, Ed, for that then, and thank you, Sean, for those questions. Okay, is there any other? Yeah, Steve, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'd just like to go back to the discussion earlier on the council tax. Just for absolute clarity, there's only one authority in Wales in the current financial year that has a Band D level lower than Caerphilly. So I just want to make that very, very clear.
Thank you, Steve, and it's an important note to make. Thank you, Christina, and then Elena.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. If I may, I'd just like to refer back to the proposal for the fixed term posts that Councillor Stenner referred to in her introduction. The Cabinet have set very bold and ambitious plans with regards to the transformation programme under the banner of Team Caerphilly. And as Councillor Stenner referred to also earlier, is that is part of our plan to ensure that the council remains resilient over the longer term, particularly from a financial perspective. And that programme of transformation is both significant in scale and complexity. And we're also delivering that big transformation plan, which is really exciting for us as officers as well, in the context of still responding to the day job, which is, certainly very busy at the moment, our COVID response. The need for capacity and resource to deliver this programme for you is paramount, and the resources set in the context of paragraph 5.2.27, which sets out the narrative and the need behind these resources. In terms of the governance arrangements around the transformation programme, again, Cabinet have recently agreed to regular reports on progress from the Team Caerphilly Transformation Board, which Councillor Stenner chairs, and it also features as part of a regular scrutiny programme before it comes into Cabinet for decision and for consideration. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, that was very useful. Thank you. And Councillor Stenner?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there has been some concerns raised about the 3.9% rise in the council tax in Caerphilly in a time when we found, we're in unprecedented times with families struggling with job losses, a reduced furlough scheme in the depth of a pandemic that nobody has ever experienced before. Steve Harris has just stated that there's only one council in Wales lower council tax than Caerphilly. The rise of 3.9% equates to a rise of 59 pence per week for a Band A property. And whilst I appreciate that for some residents, 59 pence per week would be a very small amount, I realise that for some families this is a real worrying amount. However, it must be noted that our most vulnerable families within Caerphilly will be protected by that council tax reduction scheme that we talked about earlier on. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor Stenner. And thank you for all those comments and, and quite rightly those questions raised as well. I think, I'm absolutely proud of the way this authority continues to manage its financial affairs, and thanks to our ongoing sound financial management and very much approved approach in that. We are working hard to ensure that the council remains financially resilient, specifically through these uncertain times. As we all know, we're not sure what's going to happen in the future. And I'd really like to thank everyone that's been involved for their hard work in making it possible. The positive financial settlement that we received from Welsh Government is to be welcomed. Absolutely it is. And because this year was also a good settlement, this financial year that we're currently in. But this has allowed us to focus on delivery of our key services this year rather than making any type of cuts. And that is so, so important. We, like other authorities, have experienced these over many, many years. So to be in this position at this point in time and not to have to make cuts is an absolute positive for us as an authority. Caerphilly Council is on a journey of improvement and transformation, as just been mentioned by Councillor Stenner and our Chief Exec, Christina Harry. You know, we are absolutely ambitious for our authority in order to improve our resilience and to improve delivery of services to the best of our abilities. So we're going on a journey, as I've already said, in terms of improvement and transformation. And this budget and these proposals laid out in this draft budget actually gives us that sound platform for us to move forward. And that is significant. In terms of our council tax, yes, the proposed increase of 3.9 is likely to be one of the lowest in Wales. And Steve Harris has just indicated that, and so has Councillor Stenner, in terms of what it's in Wales. This again relates to 89 pence per week, you know, for our Band D properties, and for our Band A, much less, that Councillor Stenner has just indicated. Whilst none of us want to see an increase in council tax, we all need to appreciate that it plays an important part in balancing our budget going forward. It's important to note that this year's government, the Welsh Government's financial settlement does not cover the financial implications of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. So as stated, we need to keep this matter under close review, and that is detailed in the report from Steve Harris. Please support this draft budget, and I'm sure residents across the county borough will welcome the proposals, which will mean we can protect our key services for the future, and that is the second thing. So I'm happy now, therefore, to go to the vote on the recommendations I've laid out in the report that both Councillor and Councillor Cook presented to us today. So if we can get the voting card up, Charlotte, we can go to the vote. Okay, thank you, everyone. It was John. Would you like to give
Leader.
yours?
Yeah, I support the vote, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you. They were unanimously supported. Thank you, everyone. And can I just say, it was remiss of me not to say at the beginning of the meeting to welcome Emily Gill from the press, and also Councillor Mann as well. So welcome, Colin. I didn't welcome you at the beginning of the meeting, so welcome. Okay, next item then is the Teachers' Pay Award, and that's over to Councillor Stenner once again.
Thank you again, Leader. The purpose of this report is to provide Cabinet with details and subsequent implications relating to the Teachers' Pay Award September 2020. Also to outline details of a funding shortfall and provide a proposal with regards to how this could be funded in the current financial year. The report provides details of the Teachers' Pay Award for September 2020. If the strategy is to fully support uplift in funding for this purpose to our schools, an in-year grant from Welsh Government does not fund this cost in full, circa 50%. The recommendations are shown at 3.1 and are: Cabinet support a proposal to fund the estimated shortfall relating to the Teachers' Pay Award in 2021 of £286,000, that the shortfall is funded from the in-year projected underspend within miscellaneous finance budgets. The reason for the recommendation is shown at 4.1 of the report. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Councillor... forgot seconding. Colin, sorry.
I'm happy to second the recommendations and support the recommendations at 3.1.
Thank you so much, Colin. Okay, thank you, everyone. Are there any questions relating to this? No? Okay, this is quite a straightforward in terms of addressing the in-year need to address those. Steve Harris, would you like to make any further comment?
Not really, Leader. As you say, it's a straightforward report. It will address the shortfall in the current year. And just to reassure you, moving forward, the full year impact has been covered off in the financial settlement.
Of course, yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. I think we're content then to go to the vote on that one. Are you able to put the voting cards up, Charlotte?
Once again, Leader, verbal support.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to see the chat bar?
Sorry to interrupt, Leader. It's Amy speaking. Just to confirm,
hi, Amy. Sorry.
Problems. Charlotte's just about to insert the vote in seconds. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, they've come up now. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That's unanimous. Okay, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is to receive the Task and Finish Group report on car parking.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. A joint scrutiny task and finish group was initially established back in 2019 to consider the car parking in the county borough. Despite the prevailing circumstances, the task and finish group undertook extensive examination of this important subject and produced a detailed report, which was subsequently considered and debated by the Joint Scrutiny Committee. The recommendations of the Joint Scrutiny Committee are set out in section 3 of the report. However, before we move to the debate, I think it's important to note that the impact of COVID was at the forefront of much of our discussions, and consequently there was particular and as I recall, highly vocal support for the permanent removal of the parking charges at our 5 hugely popular country parks to recognise the health benefits these provide to residents. I'll say no more, but I will ask Kath Forbes-Thompson to briefly take us through some of the background. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, Councillor George, would you like to come in?
Oh, apologies, yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to second the report. Thank you.
Okay, Kath, then, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Leader. As Councillor Ridgewell outlined, the joint meeting of the 2 scrutiny committees considered a detailed report from the Task and Finish Group. And the Task and Finish Group came up with a number of recommendations. In fact, there were 16 recommendations. I think it was fair to say that the Joint Scrutiny Committee went through every single one of those recommendations and considered them each in detail. And they felt there were some of them they could not support. For example, they couldn't support introducing charges at park and ride car parks because they felt that the impact on residential areas would be too great. They also felt there were a number of recommendations that should be deferred for a number of reasons, for further discussion with ward members, for example. And also, they also considered an additional point about replacing some of the pay and display machines at the car parks. So as Councillor Ridgewell said, they agreed a number of recommendations set out in section 3. 3.2 was to have a standardised hourly tariff across all car parks. They felt it would be easier for all residents in the county borough, so they know that any car park they attend, the charge would be the same. They didn't set specifically which rate would be applicable. They felt it should be at one of the lower rates, not the highest rate. And I know the chair of the Task and Finish Group recommended the 70p starting per hour. They also recommended a 3.3, as Councillor Ridgewell said, that the country park charges, car park charges agreed in 2014 should be removed. This does not include Cumcarn Country Park because that was previously charging prior to 2014. And also they felt it was important to maintain the turnover of spaces at the Cumcarn. With regard to the recommendation 3.4, they had an example where the car parking fairly close to one of the schools allows some discretion where parents can park for free for a small period of time to drop off and pick up times to relieve the congestion on the side streets. And they felt that would be useful in some other areas. And they mentioned Blackwood, for example, at Pentrabane. So they'd like officers to have discretion to do that going forward. In regard to 3.5, at the moment, officers have allowed some limited use of car parks for things like trade-in or, for example, health screening. And they felt that where is community benefit, that should continue. They discussed CCTV quality, and they understood there are limits in terms of capacity, in terms of what can be allowed in on CCTV, but they felt that there should be opportunities to explore in terms of improving the quality of the CCTV. And as I mentioned earlier, at 3.7, the additional recommendation to replace pay and display machines across the county borough should be agreed and implemented going forward. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Kath, for that clarification there on a number of the recommendations. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'd like to thank the Task and Finish group for doing such a thorough job of looking into the issues around the car parking, and they did bring a significant amount of recommendations. We've had many discussions in the Cabinet around this, and I'm glad to see that many of the things that we've discussed were actually have come out of that joint scrutiny committee. And I agree with John where he's moving these recommendations that have come out of the scrutiny committee. They seem so much more reasonable. If I could just ask, first of all, can we give officers the discretion to allow free parking at those school times when they are busy, literally for that 20-minute, half-hour period? Can we continue to give discretion to officers to allow that? And secondly, the scrutiny recommends that we fund the purchase of the new ticket machines because, you know, we all know that searching around for your 70 pence cash is always a pain. So we do need these machines which will accept a card. I notice in the report there that it says that we've already had 50% of the funding has been made available to us through Welsh Government. Can we therefore fund the rest of this? I suppose I know this is the day we're talking about budget, so I'm going to ask Steve Harris if this can be written into the final budget to pay for these machines. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Morgan. I see that we did have Mark S. ready to, I think, Steve, as the question was directed to you. Do you want Mark to take it, or do you want to come in on it?
If I take the question on the financial implications and perhaps go back to Mark for the one around using discretion. I'll just take the opportunity really to sum up the financial implications. Recommendation 3.2 to standardise the charges across the county borough will result in an income shortfall of around £40,000, and the removal of the parking charges at the country parks will result in a shortfall of 50k. So that 90,000 in total is actually included in the draft budget proposals. So if you're supportive of these recommendations today, that will then hopefully be formally signed off by council when it meets on the 24th of February. In terms of the cost of the upgrade of the pay and display machines, the total cost at the moment is 350k. We have grant funding from Welsh Government of £172,000. So that does leave a net shortfall of £178,000. And what I'd like to propose to Cabinet today so we can move forward with this quickly is that we add a recommendation at 3.8 of the report, which would be the residual funding requirement of £178,000 to upgrade pay and display machines be funded from capital earmark reserves. And if you're minded to approve that today, we can obviously progress this then quite quickly. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you ever so much, Steve, for clarifying that extra 90,000, which has already been costed within the draft budget proposal. And thank you for that in terms of the suggestion on the recommendation to use capital earmarked reserves shortfall. Councillor Morgan, before I bring Mark S in.
I was just wondering, I certainly agree with that further recommendation. I was just wondering if John, who actually moved the report and the recommendations, would be also supportive of it.
Yeah, Councillor Ridgewell.
Yeah, thank you. I'm risking the camera. Absolutely, Councillor Morgan. I absolutely agree with that, and complete support.
Okay, if we can add the word in for that additional recommendation then to use the capital earmarked reserves for that 178,000. Am I right in that figure? Yes, Steve?
Yes, Leader, that's correct. £178,000.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, thank you. Then we'll include that then. So that when we take the vote at the end, that would be an additional recommendation then for us. Okay. Mark S, did you want to come in now? And then I'll bring in Councillor Phipps.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Two points relating to Councillor Morgan's queries. I think the first one was around the delivery and installation of the replacement pay and display machines. If Cabinet take the decision today to implement those recommendations, then yes, they can be in place by the 1st of April. I think Councillor Morgan's second query is about discretion for car parks near schools. Fairly simple thing to do. If Cabinet are happy to provide officers with that discretion, we would just instruct our civil parking enforcement officers not to enforce, in relation to the purchase of tickets between those particular times at schools. But we'd also engage with the local members and the school head in advance of that as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mark, for clarifying that. Okay, and it's key, isn't it, that we have that engagement with heads and also local ward members as well in relation to the impact, because as we all know, this is all car parks all over the county borough. This is just a few areas where this presents a problem for us. Okay, Councillor Phipps, you did have your hand up. Did you want to come in?
Mark has kindly answered my question. I was going to ask about how soon. I know Steve Harris said it could be implemented quickly. I just wanted to ask how quickly, but Mark has answered that for me. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much for that then. Okay, there's no other indications for questions on that then. So are we happy to go to the vote then on this with the additional recommendations as already indicated? Yeah, if you're all happy with that. Okay. I'm seeing something new for the first time. Okay, the forms now are appearing in a different format. Is that normal for everyone?
Leader, if I may, I suspect it may be down to another update from our friends at Microsoft, which we have no control over. So yeah, we will get these from time to time, and it normally happens mid-meeting. So do your best to vote on the basis of the new approach.
Yeah, no, I think, can I just say, I think because mine came up in the centre of the screen, not in the chat bar. So I have done it. I just hope that's being recorded. And maybe if you can tell me if that's not been recorded, then that's fine. Have you do yours, Councillor Ridgewell?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I've got a choice of two, in fact, in the taskbar in the middle. I hope my vote's only counted once.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. I think it looks like we are unanimous in that. Okay, thank you. Okay, on to the next item then, which is the enforced policy, the next item on the agenda. If I can go over to Councillor Morgan, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I very much welcome this report. This proposed enforced sale policy is a mechanism by which problematic long-term empty private sector dwellings or derelict commercial properties or even land can be brought back into beneficial use, and it can happen where council debts have been registered against the property but not discharged, with the debt remains unpaid. And the purpose of this policy is to set out a framework for Caerphilly County Borough Council to use the statutory powers under the enforced sale procedure with a view of targeting these long-term problematic empty properties. As it states there in the covering report from the Joint Environment and Sustainability and Housing and Regen Scrutiny Committee from the 15th of December, the number of properties remaining empty for more than 6 months is circa, it fluctuates or between 1,000 and 1,500 a year. Now, obviously, the majority of these properties will make their way back onto the housing market. And I know that our very capable private housing team work with property owners and do as much as they can in the first instance. Therefore, in terms of this policy, dealing with these very problematic properties, it's probably going to be in the single figures. The types of properties that this policy aims to bring back into beneficial use are the ones that can be, and I know most councillors sort of have one or two in their areas where there's these properties become a source of vandalism, a real issue for the neighbours of the property. There can be fly tipping, vandalism, arson, squatting, all sorts of antisocial behaviour taking part in these properties which seem not to have an owner. And people always question why they are left like that. So the recommendations which were supported by the Joint Scrutiny Committee are that Caerphilly County Borough Council adopts the enforced sale policy as an enforcement tool, and that the Cabinet agrees a figure of £500 be adopted as the level of debt at which the policy can be implemented. So as I say, I'm very much in favour of this. I'm happy to move it and the recommendations contained in the report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Phipps, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Like Councillor Morgan, I welcome this report. I'm happy to second it. And can I take this opportunity of thanking the officers for bringing it to Cabinet today? Thank you.
Mark, your hand is up. I'm not sure you wanted to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just to build on some of the comments from Councillor Morgan there, this is a policy that the authority hasn't had in place. A number of our neighbours, Blaenau Gwent, Torfaen, for example, they've had these policies for a while and they prove very useful in dealing with some of these very problematic premises. This is not, something we're going to use day in, day out to target, properties that have been empty for sort of 5 minutes. It's very much a tool in the box that officers can use as Councillor Morgan said, really a tool of last resort when we've exhausted all other potential options in terms of working with the owner, indeed if the owner can be tracked down. So very much a tool in the box, but one that can be used as last resort, but certainly one that other authorities and our neighbours find a very useful policy and have had in place for some time. So obviously as officers we welcome Cabinet support for introducing the policy and providing officers with a tool that they can use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Morgan, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, I would. As I say, I very much support this policy. I certainly have a property within my own ward which is well known to the private property team. It's been set on fire. It's been used as a drug dealing place. It's just a constant nightmare. I really feel for the people who live in adjoining properties because it really impacts on their lives. What I would ask is if Mark could perhaps, or I don't know, Sean Cousins is here, if you could outline the type of work that goes on with the private housing team before we get to the point where we would be using this. So could you just outline the work of the private housing team?
Yeah, certainly. Claire, I think Claire Davis is on the call, so I'll bring Claire in a minute. But if I can just perhaps use as a by way of example, a property we've been dealing with now for quite some time, which is the Tabor Chapel property at Mysycuma, causing quite a bit of issue for the local community and the local member. We've had to do quite a significant amount of works in default in terms of netting the roof because slates were sliding off. It's obviously dangerous. We have tried to work with the owner in terms of the sale of the property. That the owner is a distant owner, I think, from the Midlands, so that's proved not particularly fruitful. So this is an example where it takes up a lot of officer time, causes a lot of angst for the community. We've explored many options in terms of service and notices, works in default. There are no charges on the property, which sort of pale into insignificance compared to the £500 threshold. So that's just by way of an example of a non-domestic, non-dwelling property. But I do believe that Claire Davis is on the call. Councillor Morgan, and she will be able to comment on the private housing stuff.
Hi, so Claire Davis, Private Sector Housing Manager. Hi. Yeah, so in relation to, when we deal with houses, as Mark just mentioned, we don't deal with properties at the moment that are not houses, but obviously with the development of the empty property team, that will change moving forward. Initially, we would engage with the owner from the receipt of the complaint or for whatever reason that property comes to our attention. We'd arrange an inspection both internally and externally of the property, sometimes in linking in with our planning region colleagues. If appropriate, if the property can be repaired, if it's in disrepair, there would be conversations around grants that are available. If it's linked into the Valley Task Force programme, there would be conversations about loans if the grants weren't appropriate for this particular type of building. There could possibly be conversations around bringing the property back into use through the Caerphilly Keys programme. Sometimes, unfortunately, the inspection will reveal that it's not appropriate to return it to use, and in those cases, we look to demolish. That is extreme. I can only think of 2 properties we've demolished recently, which were both in the Phillipstown area. So there's lots of work that we would undertake to try and get that property back into use and to try and engage with the owner. Unfortunately, this policy will be great to move on some of those properties. Like it's been previously stated, the numbers would hopefully be low because the prior engagement would have worked on the majority. But if the owner does pay the amount of debt, then obviously we won't be able to use the policy. So those particular properties will be difficult. I know in relation to the property Councillor Morgan has referenced, the owner has always paid when we've undertaken work in default. But obviously if they don't pay, then this will be a new tool that we can use. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Really helpful. Councillor Ridgewell.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, a more general question, really. But let me just say how much I welcome this policy. I mean, I can see it having huge benefits for the community. I'm interested to know at this stage if we've actually got some criteria on how these properties might be prioritised in terms of action. In that, within my ward, there's been an issue with a cannabis farm in a certain building, and I'm just wondering whether or not there's a range of criteria that are applied over and above the meeting the debt threshold that you look at before making decisions about whether you're going to move or not.
So in relation to how we look at empty properties, we receive information from Council Tax on April the 1st each year relating to how many properties meet the definition. So this year, this current financial year, there's 1,441 properties on that list. And then in the normal event of a year, we would look to visit the properties, the new ones that have been added to that list that we're not familiar with, and they're all risk assessed against each other. So the officer goes along, undertakes a risk assessment based on various points, such as the condition that it looks like, if it's affecting the neighbours, are there complaints associated with it, all of those kind of things. And then it's given a number, and then all of the properties in that programme are risk assessed against each other. So the list would be on a risk assessment basis, and the authority would move forward with those with the highest risk scores.
Thanks, Claire. Very helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Alan, did you want to come in on the back of that?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just to point out that the accompanying report actually sets out in 5.7 all the criteria that have to be met before we invoke and use this policy. And just to summarise, we've mentioned about there being a debt of £500 or more. The debt must not be statute barred. The debt must be for more than 2 months. The property must be vacant with no prospect of it becoming occupied in the next 6 months. If the owner can be traced, they must have demonstrated willful non-compliance, and that we've had no response to letters regarding the potential of enforced sale. So it's very much a tool to be used as a last resort.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan. And that again is really helpful. And as you say, it's a tool for you to have in your armoury as a last resort. So thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think I just wanted to ask, I suppose, either Alan or Claire. There is this policy could still be frustrated, I suppose, in that we could go through the whole process and get to the 11th hour, and then the owner pays off the £500. So that would stop the process. Then that property could continue, you know, after having some small amount of works done. It could still be a sort of abandoned and left by that same owner, and we would have to start the process all over again, and they could frustrate us by at the 11th hour again paying the £500 debt. Is that right? So this isn't going to solve all our problems with these properties.
Yes, Leader, unfortunately, the Cabinet member is correct there. But we do have Martin Woodland with us from our legal services section, who has used this policy to good effect in other local authorities when he worked there. If Martin could come in and say a few words.
Yeah, his hand was up ready and I was about to call him in, Alan. So great. Come in, Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yes, this is a limited power, and members of the Cabinet Committee have got to realise that it can only be applied right in relation to the strict criteria that's laid down in the statute. For instance, Councillor Ridgewell mentioned, you know, a property being used as a cannabis farm. Well, unfortunately, that wouldn't allow us to use enforced sales. However, right, if the property, you know, was a blight upon the landscape of the county borough, and it was considered to be a dangerous or dilapidated building or structure, then we could use powers under the Building Act to enforce sale. In relation to mention another member made in relation to £500, the £500 is basically a trigger point. Say, for instance, you've got a dangerous, dilapidated building, we've got to go in there and board it up. We would incur charges then, as a local authority under the Building Act, provided that charge was over £500, that triggers enforced sales. Then what happens then, various departments become involved, say the Environmental Health Department, they would look upon it to see if it was appropriate to use the enforced sale procedure. Letters, you know, are written out. You know, this is not a power that, you know, we use willy-nilly. It's a power of last resort, and it's right. What other members of the Cabinet Committee has said, if the debt is paid off, then that basically stops, you know, the process in its tracks. However, from experience with my former authority, and also having sort of done work for Torvine Council as well on the same thing, it's proven to be a very useful tool. And, you know, you may have, you know, between 1,000, 1,500 properties empty in the borough. It's right, you know, the members' attention have been drawn this morning to the fact that these would be in the low tens. You know, for instance, I would say that probably the most we did in my former authority was about a dozen a year. But it's a very useful property. It's a very useful power, sorry, and you know, of course, you know, members are fully aware of you know, their constituents coming to them and complaining about these properties that are blight on the landscape, and it's just a very useful property. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Martin. Again, very useful, you know, to cover off the background around this, you know, and the implications, and the fact, as you say, it's a tool. It's a tool to aid, you know, policy will hopefully give us what we need in being that tool in our armoury. Okay, there's no further questions I can see indicated. I think we're ready to go to the vote on them then, if we are able. And we'll see what Microsoft Teams does for us this time. Okay. Are you able to vote, Councillor Ridgewell?
Yeah, bear with me. I've tried it in one of the boxes. It didn't work. I'll try this one now. Yeah, it's gone through, isn't it? Looks like it's gone through, Leader.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got
okay.
7. We've got
oh yeah,
7.
I can see it now. Yeah, thank you. Okay, that's been unanimous, and thank you everyone. And can I say thank you to all officers the help there in terms of responses. And also I'd just like to say thank you to the Cabinet in supporting the recommendations today, you know, firstly on the draft budget, on the teachers' pay, and then the car park report, and also now the enforced sales. And I think there's a raft of good policies and decisions made there going forward. So I just want to say thank you to one and all for your help and assistance in that. And thank you to Ken, who's viewing today, and I think we have another councillor that's viewing as well, Councillor Pritchard, and also Emily Gill from the press. So thank you one and all. I'll end the meeting there then, please.